Uh, Good evening. It is Wednesday, October 23rd at 6:30 p.m.-ish. We are at the main floor meeting room in the Ritter Building. I am Peter Beardmore, Chair of the Capital Planning Committee, and we are calling this meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. You can also participate remotely using the Zoom link, which was provided on the posted agenda. In the event that there is a problem with the remote meeting, this meeting will proceed in person as scheduled. The agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Is there any public comment today? Oh, I have somebody that I need to admit. All right. To whomever I just admitted, I have opened the meeting to public comment, and I apologize I didn't see you in the waiting room. So if you have a comment, please feel free to join in. If not, we will move ahead. Hearing none. Okay. Chair's report. The only thing that I have to update is I did receive earlier today an update from the superintendent with new numbers for the two items that she indicated on Monday need to be revised. I have not forwarded those to you via email, but I will do so at my earliest convenience. I also received today an email from Kara McCarty, who I don't know, but she identified herself as the administrator for the IT function.
That's a website.
And forwarded a deck that is apparently the deck that we are going to receive at some point for IT. It was not in conformance with the general principles that we had all discussed, and indicated some things that had not been updated for probably a year. So I requested that, number one, we still need to schedule a date. And number two, I'd like to have a conversation with whomever is presenting in advance so that we can do our darndest to get that thing as close as possible to how the other items are being presented. So more to follow on that. I also indicated that our next meeting on November 4th is our only scheduled meeting to hear proposals and requests. So ideally that will come in that evening, but that will also make for a fairly long meeting because we are going to have DPW and fire already scheduled for the night of November 4th. So just to give everybody a heads up that may be a long night. Other than that, I have nothing else to report at this time. I will move review and approve minutes down in the agenda so that we can move ahead with the facilities presentation from Mr. Ruth. Mr. Ruth's presentation was forwarded last week in PDF form. He has just sent me a PowerPoint, and I will be projecting that in the Zoom throughout the course of the discussion tonight. I think that's it.
All right.
All right, let me move the camera and we'll get started. Let me get my Zoom set up. Bear with me, please. Screen share and hope for the best. Can you see? Yep, okay, good. We have confirmation that we have a slide up here, and take it away, Mr. Ruth.
All right, thank you very much. The first slide is really just a cover sheet, so we can skip past that one. This next slide here is just giving everyone a quick overview of the facilities that we manage. I've broken this down into 2 slides between the town facilities and the parks. I'm happy to run through them, but I think most people are aware that we have 11 buildings that fall under my side of the facilities. You have Town Hall, the Ritter Memorial Library, Department of Public Works, our Public Safety Complex. We have the Adult Activity Center, Public Library, the Boys and Girls Club. The Upper and Lower Common falls under facilities. The Brooks House, TC Passios Building, the old primary school, which is now just a empty field where they play t-ball. We also help out with the Hollis Road conservation property and the old gas station at 925 Mass Ave. On to our next slide, we just have our parks, which is Marshall Park and Pond. We have Memorial Park or Veterans Park, the Town Beach and the Beach House, and then we have McNally Park, Wallace Park, and Fitzgerald Field. Jump on to the next one. So these next couple slides are just a brief overview of all of the projects. I have almost 100 on my list at the moment for pushing out for the various buildings through all these years, so I don't think we need to go through all of those right now. The next slide here is just the 2026 slides, and I apologize, but I realized today that I had 2 formatting issues on this. One, it's out of order, and the other one is the teen center flooring replacement was supposed to say 25,000, not 35.
Okay, can you just send an updated version of that
I
at
will
some
do
point
that.
in the
Yep.
future? Yeah, thank you.
I will get it out to you hopefully this week. So our next 2 slides here are 3, I think, 6, 7, and 8.
So that, just to be clear, the parking lot you've got spread over 2 years because it's a design and then implementation.
Yes.
Okay.
So those next couple slides, unless anyone feels the need to run through them, are just kind of the list of capital projects that I've got for future stuff.
Does anybody wanna just take a moment, or maybe we can go, so your intent is to go deep on 26 and then get questions on the out years?
Yeah, I mean, the out years, a lot of it is ballpark estimates and not knowing what prices are gonna do, but it's, we know we need a roof after 20 years and windows after 20, so I just like to keep all the projects listed so we don't lose track of anything.
Okay,
So I do have like general questions in this area, and I'll go to one of my favorite buildings, the Brooks House, which in like 2030, you have a bunch of projects in there, but
That was,
I don't think we ever intend to do any of those,
no,
right?
those were on the list from before, and we just kind of pushed them out. At the moment, APDC has an article to try to sell the Brooks House, and the facilities department is not opposed to that in any way, shape, or form, just because there's not a whole lot of feasible use for us over there.
So I think part of the value of getting a good 5 and or 10-year plan really comes down to good projections of things. And if there's items on here which we never intend to do, in my opinion, we should just get rid of them. Or put them into some other bucket that is like, don't wanna lose them, but we never intend to do them.
I'm happy to do that. It's easy enough to edit my spreadsheets.
Well, that's just my opinion, what is the rest of the,
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good, so part of the challenge here, Mr. Ruth, is that we are charged with putting forth a 5-year capital plan that this board has not traditionally done, which is why we're trying to do this a little earlier, so that we can give ourselves some headspace to do that at some point. In the past, the practice has been that the town manager rolls up all of the requests as part of the fiscal forecast, and then projects a funding amount, and then there's a gap, and then it just kind of rolls from year to year. We're trying to add a little bit more rigor and projection to the projections,
Yep.
so to speak. And so, I think Chris is onto something. I think that there's probably a very unlikely category, right? Where we can kind of put those things into a bucket and then say, and then if you really want to, if you really want to make yourself miserable, we can look at the unlikely numbers in terms of where the gaps are. But, short of that building being torn down or sold, obviously it's deferred maintenance and we have to track that somewhere, right?
Well, I mean, we have to track it somewhere, I agree, okay, yes,
So we just have to figure out how to do that.
yeah, or maybe it just has to go in unallocated or something. I think one of the things I'd like to be able to do with this list is also maybe add, especially in your area, a few, schools maybe as well, like, a few attributes to this, to say like which building it is, same thing with schools, and then also get a better understanding of operational costs, like, I'm putting my finance hat on, right? So what are these buildings costing us? So someone can say, hey, Brooks House, over the next 10 years, we're gonna spend $1 million to keep this pretty building around, or whatever it is, right? Is this what we really wanna do?
Yep. And my actual spreadsheet that this came from has all those columns. It's just, it's 100 lines long and
Yeah.
18 wide, so I
But-
shrink it down.
But effectively, I think that's what Chris is asking for,
Right.
is the spreadsheet,
Yep, I
right?
can
So that
send
we
that
can
over.
get to that data and really kind of break rocks,
Yeah.
I think TC Passios is almost an identical scenario, right? Like, there's millions of dollars here on TC Passios that I can't imagine spending a fraction of that.
Yeah, but then, even hearing, not your building, but maybe your building in the future, if we go down a path, is the, Turkey Hill. When I look at all the things that I saw on that one, it really asks you like,
Mhm.
is it worth keeping that building around, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I think that those are the decisions as a town, we once and for all need to tackle and make, which is I think why we're
Yeah,
putting a
and-
little more
and-
emphasis on this.
But and so the one caveat that I would put on Turkey Hill is that it is the subject of a study right now. And I mean, they're reviewing bids like literally today on that and balancing the, build to make it stand for 100 years versus reprogram it to an elementary school, and like those kinds of issues are all, in play right now as part of this bids process. But we will absolutely figure
Okay.
that out.
Cause I think a plan is more than just numbers in a spreadsheet, it's
Absolutely.
actually,
Yeah.
here's my vision, here's what I'm looking to do.
I'm actually glad you said that, because one of my biggest challenges right now is I don't know what the plan is for the interior of this building or town hall, or TCP. And the building design committee is getting back in gear and working on that, but it's quite difficult to plan. I inherited a whole bunch of projects, and some of them were new carpets in here, new paint. And last year it was, well, we're gonna renovate it, but without knowing a timeline, if it's 10 years out, we have to replace the carpets. They're not gonna last.
Yeah.
So part of it is understanding that plan. Last year we got some money for a section of roof at TCP, and all the details. The plan at the time was the school was gonna stay. Now there's a halfway decent possibility the school is going to leave TCP, so it's hard for me to justify spending that $300,000 on a section of roof that nobody's under anymore.
Right.
I think we could repurpose it, but without having a good plan, it's very difficult.
I completely agree.
But I can send you the spreadsheet, and the only one from TCP that we can't avoid is the asbestos, the abatement.
Yeah, sooner or later, even if you take the building down, you gotta take
No
care
matter
of
what,
this.
we own it, so.
And I think as a director, part of what I would be looking for you to do is help lead us through a discussion on what the vision of these should be in your recommendation, and then throughout our various boards, we can start to maybe try to translate that into actual plans and funding and momentum, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I could give you a quick summary of what I would love to see, but.
I don't know if we need to do it tonight,
Yeah.
but I think the first step is culling out things that we're just never gonna do.
Yeah.
That would be my opinion.
I can separate it as well.
And for what it's worth, Chris, it might be worth having a conversation with the superintendent specific to the schools and TCP, because that has been a topic of school committee
Oh, yeah.
discussion over the last couple of meetings.
We've had quite a few, and I actually had a quick meeting with Carter today about it as well. And so we are trying to move forward.
And just a heads up, I actually asked her to reach out to you on the cost of playgrounds, knowing that you now are understanding the cost of playgrounds on other projects.
Yes, they were absurd.
So, thank you.
So if you want
Okay, so you wanna go to the 26 capital project stuff?
yes, yep. We can even skip right over that cover sheet
Yeah.
because it's just a cover sheet. So on my agenda here, I have the projects that I would like to go over for 26. They are not necessarily in order of priority. I would say the top 7 or so, I think are a significantly higher priority, and the Parks Department may be quite upset with me for saying that, but we need to keep the buildings functioning before adding additional park work.
Where you've got the reference number as an XXXX, these are items that you could not get into ClearGov?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, those numbers, I looked at reviewed some older notes. ClearGov never generated those. Those were all manually driven. Every one of those numbers. Yes.
To what?
They were assigned a number manually.
Okay.
ClearGov did not give these new projects when the superintendent says, I couldn't get ClearGov to give me one, that's because it doesn't give you one.
And so that was previously.
The town
just
manager
issued by the
would
town
go in,
manager.
right, and as they came in, would
Okay.
just put them with the fiscal year and then the number and sequence as they came in.
Okay, well, maybe that's.
Which leads me to the question,
Great.
has our ITM been invited to our meetings?
Our,
Interim town manager, sorry.
yes.
Okay, and obviously,
Well, I mean, he's been copied on all of the
right,
agenda notices and et cetera. Yeah.
okay.
So just a quick list them off here. The first one I have is the public safety second floor building design, which is a carryover from last year, and I found myself another typo, and I apologize for that. Just adjust cost for inflation, and last year I did not have the construction estimator included. The library HVAC upgrades design, senior center parking lot design, town hall HVAC upgrades, town hall window replacement, teen center flooring replacement, senior center flooring replacement, McNally Park survey and design, that's for expanding the park and some more access there, and then Marshall Pond weed treatment.
Is Teen Center the Boys and Girls Club?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
great. No worries.
The, maybe you'll get to this, but I'll just ask it in advance anyway. For the 3 items at the top that are design related, you had projected a cost for the parking, but not for the HVAC or build out of the second floor. Is that just because we have no idea in out years, or?
So for the HVAC upgrades, I have a dartboard type guess. The senior center parking one was a carryover number that somebody, my predecessor, had in there. And as well, the public safety, I'm guessing maybe 300, but I don't
You
have
have
it
it in the,
in this slide. I believe I have it.
yeah, on slide 6.
Okay, it wasn't on the, it was on slide 6?
I apologize. I had
Yeah,
final formatting. I was rushing to get this out. We have quite a few projects going right now, as I'm sure you guys are
it's on
aware.
slide 6, but not 5, slide 5.
Oh, I see, okay. Alright, so
But
we
I-
need to connect the dots on this, okay.
And in the actual slides, I've got the information. I'll
Alright.
I'll update this and fix all the formatting for you. I wanted to make sure you guys had time to look at it before the meeting.
Alright, maybe we would wanna have like a follow-on call at some point, just so that
Sure.
I, at a minimum, as I'm trying to figure out how to get this all into a spreadsheet that we can all work with.
Yep.
Understand placeholder numbers and
Yep.
what they're attached to and that kind of thing.
Yeah, my spreadsheet, I have notes next to each one of where
Okay.
I am. Alright, so next slide is the public safety building. The design work for, they have 2 rooms on the second floor of the police side that one room is kind of sitting empty right now. The other room is used for some record storage, but not as much as they need. This one, in talking with the former chief and our new interim chief, is one of their priorities because they are low on space. It would be the structural engineering required for the file storage, and then all the architectural, HVAC, and all that design work. We've actually already acquired a couple cubicles for them to use up there. I had a connection with the Red Cross in Worcester was closing a building and donating all their furniture. So we went out and took apart some cubicles to bring over there, just an effort to save some money on the construction side. It's a fairly straightforward one. You know, at the moment they have one empty office in the building, and that's because the chief just retired.
Right.
So,
The chief, the now acting chief or interim chief presented this under his as well, so we have to make sure this is not double
Kinda
dipped.
double.
Right.
It's not,
It's
I
not.
asked him.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't
And he
think
said he was gonna.
Yeah, he talked about it, but said we'd
Yeah.
see.
Okay, thank you.
anyone have any questions on this one.
My only suggestion would be, for those of you who have not had the opportunity, you might want to reach out to the interim chief and ask to take a look. Because this is somewhat, it's one thing to look at it here, it's another thing to actually be there and kind of look around and understand the space and the opportunity that it presents. As well as how the records are currently being stored, which is, not great.
And I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but paper storage is incredibly heavy. You know, it's every time I'm in the basement of town hall, I worry about being under the accounting side.
So one of the, so I did have another thought on this, and I don't recall if it was in either narrative, around digital records versus paper records, and what our regulatory obligations are around paper records. And this has come up every year, but we have new members coming and going. You know, you've got companies like Iron Mountain that's what they do.
Yep.
You know, and they do it quite economically, in my opinion. But if that's not an option, it's not an option. But you know, as part of this ask for
Yep.
a cost analysis, I think that, you know, alternatives do need to be considered.
I agree with you.
As do I, because I don't know if you've been in any of the backside of TCP, but there's a whole bunch of those black and yellow bins filled with paper files that, you know, certain things the state requires, but I can check with the interim chief and make sure we look into that.
When we cleaned out the town beach building, I was noticing swim records from my kids daily. And Rob knows how old my kids are. So I think we're doing a lot of storage that may not be necessary.
I would agree, and even when we tore down the primary school, the old, I guess, auditorium gym space was full. And we had the records cleaned and packed up, but they were not organized at all, and I think there's a pretty monumental task for the town as a whole with digital records and getting rid of some of the paper. You know, before my time, luckily they cleaned out the attic up here, so most of those files have moved, but there's quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I was finding liquor licenses from the 30s in the old primary school.
And it adds up, you know, I mean, we're literally looking at spending six figures to build a space to put paper that we might not need, you know.
You get a dumpster
And-
delivered to your house. And you fill that up.
Storage is one thing, but can we digitize going forward, so at least 30 years from now, it's not a problem?
I'm sure we could. I think that's I'm
I
not
think
sure
it-
whose capital
I,
plan that
I,
lands on.
I think it's very interesting that this committee is asking the facilities director about what the compliance and regulatory requirements of all different
Yeah, no,
departments are. Why, can you find out that, Chris, while you're doing on your other projects? Can you check about the fire and state and, you know, police records requirements?
Yeah, but it impacts him tremendously,
Yeah.
so that's why
It
I
does.
think it is.
I can tell you that the cost of digitizing can be, even going forward, in some instances can be dramatically higher than we expect, because some departments, and I'm most familiar with land use, have document sizes that are not accessible to any standard scanners. I know when Adam Burney was here, he really wanted us to look at digitizing a lot of the old records so we wouldn't have to store them, as well as going forward.
Yeah.
But to digitize with the requisite signatures and everything, like for here, for example, you were going to need something like a $30,000 or $50,000 scanner to even have that as an option, because of the odd format sizes and everything.
Not to mention the hours spent.
Yes.
And it's a little off topic, but all of these files right now are stored in the building that we're talking about potentially tearing down part of or renovating. So, we have 3 classrooms over there that are stacked with files.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else on the public safety? The next one we have here is the senior center additional parking. This has changed from its initial creation a little bit because of the outdoor ADA patio that was installed out back. The original plan for parking was to move parking out back. The current thought at the moment is to shift Kids Kingdom down, call it 100 feet or so, to add in parking next to the senior center. Their main issue is in their lot they have 9 parking spots. In between the Boys and Girls Club and the senior center, they share that lot, and then the rest of the parking's on the street. So just this week they had an event that filled the teen center lot, the shared lot, their lot, the library, and the road. And the seniors are, there's no nice way to say it, but they're probably one of the biggest groups that has mobility issues in town, and especially as we come into the winter months, it becomes a challenge. DPW has to push snowbanks back further, and I think they certainly need it. I know there'll probably have to be, start with a conceptual design and get everyone's input on it. Just to, some of the building design committee, I know there was talks of parking for future use of TCP. So I think there's quite a few stakeholders involved, but I think it's something we definitely need to move on to.
So one, and by the way, I completely agree with everything you just said. However, an issue that has come up very recently in a school committee meeting and is still not resolved in my mind is the control of that space. I brought it up last year when this came forward because the plot plan that you provided showed a dividing line that literally ran through the Kids Kingdom property at the time. And I inquired as to who has responsibility for that space. By the way, the schools currently maintain that field and the playground.
Yep.
And the town manager sent me an email that referred to a town meeting decision that put TC Passios under the responsibility of the town. However, to my knowledge, the property has never been transferred. And I don't know where TC Passios ends and the land around the building begins.
Yep.
And once again, back to the future use and strategy kind of conversations, if we ever land an elementary school where TC Passios currently sits, that space is going to be valuable space, right? So I think that remains an unresolved question. In my mind, it does anyway. I think it's resolved in other people's minds, but not in my own. But that's something that I'm still a little bit hung up on. Now, that being said, I think we have to solve this problem. And it may be that Kids Kingdom doesn't belong in that lot anymore. And I know that that's blasphemy around here, but there may be a better alternative. So
I do know some of the folks from the Council on Aging board have reached out to the family, and they would be okay with shifting it, and it's only a verbal thing. And my understanding is the school board vote that transferred TCP back, for whatever reason, retained control of Kids Kingdom. So technically the TCP is mine, but for whatever reason the playground remains with the school. And I can't speak to whatever logic was going on back then, but
yeah, the town meeting article, and I can send you the email that I got from Heather, basically stipulates it's the building that transferred to the town. So anyway, it's not resolved in my mind anyway.
So the 32,000 includes pretty much everything on the civil engineering side. You know, we've got test pits, permitting, conceptual plans, a new survey, construction estimator. It's all built into that price. So that will at least get us to a point where we have a true construction estimate. And you know, obviously now it's going to be a little more expensive because we're relocating the playground.
I think that's my bigger, you have 150 on the next phase of this, I think.
And again, that was a carryover from previous. I don't, at this point, it's a shot in the dark, and I don't have any, without a plan, I don't have an estimate.
Yeah, I think it's pretty low in my,
I would tend to agree that it's probably low, but without knowing how many parking spaces we're gonna add, you know, it's, potentially we could do a thin strip of just one row of parking. You know, I think step one would be getting to a conceptual plan and getting it in front of the stakeholders to say, this is what we think, and kind of go from there with it.
I feel like we do a lot of projects for planning and then don't follow through on them. And part of it is because we have an estimate of the cost of something that's pretty low compared to what it truly ends up being. And I think back to the cost of the playground, what kind of surface are you gonna put down? Are you gonna put down an inclusive surface? Are you gonna,
Again, there's a whole bunch of questions that are far beyond just myself making decisions. And to even give you a reasonable number, I'd have to at least start with a conceptual plan to get it to an estimator. I mean, there's certainly the possibility to do just a conceptual plan to start and then come back with it. You know, there has been talk of doing that, but without any guarantee of having additional money in my budget for next year, it's tough to go ahead and say, yeah, sure, let's take 10 grand out of my budget for this one because I may need it for another building. If you know, I would love to see you guys approve all of mine, but I know there's a lot more than just me that needs the money. So
I still think that this kind of plan could be print out on paper, I guess. You know, the map of this area and just with markers draw out where we think things are going.
we could certainly.
Size them up and then get an estimate of, you know, how much is the surface, how much is the construction running, and how much is paving per square foot or whatever.
There was a pro forma plan that was floated a couple of years ago that basically ran, you know, half of where Kids Kingdom currently sits, and then Kids Kingdom was gonna shift down. And we had a number of parking, like, we could probably take just that.
Yeah,
But that's not doable anymore with ADA patio and everything in the back.
Probably not, but at least in terms of just the amount of space and.
I'd love
you
to
what I
know-
mean? Like.
I'd love to know
range.
from Council on Aging and the Adult Activity Center, how many spots, first of all, they're looking for.
Right.
what do they need?
Right. Because I don't want to do what we can with the land we have if it doesn't make sense. That's one of the things that happened last time. Like, we're going to do all this work and then we were going to get 9 spots or
Yeah.
something. And I'm like, why am I going to spend all that money? Like, well, how many do you need? And let's look for a way to get that.
Yeah, there certainly should be some estimate of dollars per slot, right? It's-
Well, the first thing is just conceptually, how many spots do they need?
Well, I think the problem is that it's more than we can fit. You know what I mean? Like, it's.
I'd
not
like to know what the number
it's
is
a
before we
fair-
reduce
It's
it.
a fair
Yeah.
point. It's just, you know, the natural progression of the argument is more than we have space for.
I do think that it solves a lot of parking in that whole area too, so it's a good question.
And I do know that the town, from my understanding, doesn't want a whole giant parking lot in the center of town either. We want to keep as much green space as we can.
You still got to have, I mean, yeah, we've gone the absolute opposite direction though. We don't have any parking for any place generally. The largest parking spot is private parking.
Also is a, and I don't know if this has even been considered or discussed, but, you know, I frequently find myself running around. If I go to the library, I go down Memorial Drive just to see what's going on. And very frequently, it's, people are parked on the street and there's, you know, parking here, there, and everywhere around the Eagle House. But that what I call the mezzanine lot, which is, you know, there's basically two lots between that and the Mossman building. Neither of those lots are are typically full on an average Tuesday morning or something, right? So, you know, could we potentially move Kids Kingdom to one of those spaces and shift down the parking, you know, into that space so that we have parking spaces that are closer proximity to the building, and we're not.
That's actually a fantastic idea I hadn't thought about, because one of the other issues that is kind of looming out there is the ramp from that lot down to the senior center is not even remotely close to,
ADA.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
you know, if we were to replace that, you know, if we were trying to put that in today, we'd be laughed out of the room. Just because of slopes and,
So anyway, I mean, just thoughts,
I mean, that would eliminate a future $100,000 problem of replacing that ramp.
potentially, yeah.
Limit the seniors from coming down that hill and,
So anyway, I don't know if there's enough space up there for a playground or whatever, but, you know, just ideas.
You're talking about yeah.
I call it the mezzanine.
No,
lot.
I know
don't
what you
kind
mean.
of-
No,
yeah.
that puts the playground right near Boys and Girls Club, which puts differently aged but still youth activities even more adjacent. Damn, I like that. No idea if it's feasible, but
Yeah, nor do I. No idea.
I don't think it's any less feasible, unless the Boys and Girls Club would be upset about losing the additional parking there, but most of the users of the Boys and Girls Club aren't driving yet, so
legally.
legally.
I would like, I think the next step on this though is to ask I guess the Council on Aging or the Senior Center to just print out that paper and see what they would want and get the questions of like, how many spots do they need?
Aren't there general principles on spots that are required per square foot of a building or something
Yes.
like that?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we could figure out the number that they're supposed to
If
have.
only we had such planning and zoning bylaws.
yeah. See,
That would be a great thing.
we do have parking requirements. I don't know that anything we're talking about vaguely falls within them because they're the more standard things on the use table. What's that?
If you're building a new building.
They apply if you're building a new building, if there's a change of use in the building, people don't like that very much. They apply, but again, I don't think we have anything that's like, I don't know what on the use table off the top of my head would be the senior center or the Boys and Girls Club, because they're a public service community group, and I just don't. I can't think of anything that would apply.
I would
But-
assume the regulars would know at peak time, this is about how many cars
Yeah.
we need.
No, I think you're right.
Okay, anything else on this one? We gotta figure this one out.
No more questions on that one. We'll jump to the next slide here. So the next one is for Town Hall HVAC upgrade. So currently Town Hall has 4 furnace air handler units. The 2 in the basement that serve the first floor were replaced, I didn't write it down, but I want to say it was about 5 or 6 years ago. The 2 up in the attic are, best guesstimate, because we don't have the best records, about 20 to 24 years old. And they are at the end of their life. The other part of this would be replacing the 4 air conditioner condensers outside, including the line sets and the coils that cool them. And part of the fun with that one is those units are still running R22 refrigerant, which has to be reclaimed, and I wish we could still use it because I think it works better. But so this project has the cost for, I have my construction estimate as well as, you know, design and specifications. I'd need an engineer just to make sure we're putting the most efficient stuff in there. This one would also most certainly be eligible for some sort of green community grants to help fund some of it.
But if we're looking, well, I don't know when the next round of grants is. They just finished the round right now, so.
And some of them, sometimes it's a reimbursement grant, sometimes it's matching, which is one of the challenges with those grants, because if it's a matching one that expires, but we haven't got through capital yet, you're kind of a catch-22 on it.
Have you touched base with the green community?
I touched base with them quite a bit, but
Okay. Not about, I mean, about
not
this.
specifically this one, no.
Just one unrelated to Green Communities question. There's part of these multiple scenarios and plans that the municipal building committee came up with respect to, an annex here, rehab on this building, doing work on town hall for repurposing it. Was any of this captured in those plans? For example, if we were to do some sort of excludable debt specifically for a large-scale municipal building project, would this be captured in that program?
So my thought for town hall is, kind of their conceptual plans would still have a similar layout, would still have the 2 units in the basement, 2 units in the attic. We may have to rework ductwork for the new ones, but I think the units would still be able to serve the space just fine.
I agree. That wasn't really the nature of my question. The nature of my question was, as they have been looking at the total cost of these potential scenarios and how we're going to fund them, is HVAC included in that planning or not?
I'm not sure if they've gotten to that level with it. I would hope so, and that would be money that would come off of their plan if we have new units in there that don't need to be replaced. My predecessor had some HVAC upgrades to this building on there, that it's kind of on that list of push them out because
Yeah.
the boilers are fairly new, the mini splits are keeping up in here for the time being, and this building, my understanding is would be kind of a total gut. So I think for this building, it wouldn't be worthwhile where all of the units are in a space that are getting gutted. Town hall, there won't ever be anything in that basement or that attic as usable space for the public.
No, I understand. Yep. So maybe not in terms of fitting in that funding envelope.
And this one again carries the designs and specifications, construction estimator, and all of these numbers have a 10% contingency attached to them. Any questions on this one? The next one here is library HVAC upgrades, the design work for it. I know everyone likes to think of the library as a newer building, but we're at 20 years, which is creeping up on the end of the lifespan for some of these units. We've had quite a few issues with the library in the past couple of years, to the tune of 10,000 plus a year into right now one of the units. It's a couple issues of one, the controls are, some of them are still communicating, some aren't. The parts no longer exist to replace them. And in someone's infinite wisdom, when they put the building in, they did one of my biggest pet peeves, and they used Johnson controls, which are proprietary. So it means you're locked into very few vendors to work on them and only one supply of the parts. So this is kind of a twofold one. One is a plan to upgrade the controls, and the other one is a plan to replace the rooftop units. As of right now, we wouldn't change any ductwork, but the controls would be likely running new wiring to all of the units because the old Johnson controls ran more of a thermostat wire. Everything new runs, Cat 6 network cable.
So, and forgive me, I'm not a building guy, so.
No worries.
Why does this require $32,000 of engineering work and design work?
So-
in my mind, big honking HVAC on the roof, replace it with another big honking HVAC on the room, put a control panel on it, and wire it up. What?
I wish it was that simple. So for the rooftop design, the initial estimate I got for that was about $13,000, and that also includes structural evaluations to make sure the roof can handle the weight of the new units, making sure the new units can actually function correctly. In my opinion, any building built in that 2000s era, the heating systems were a disaster. They they were pushing the cutting edge of the technology that wasn't quite there yet. And it's the exact same issue we're having at the public safety building. And that one has a different system that hopefully we've got just about figured out. But, you know, even that system from day one was designed wrong. I met with a couple of my contractors and their designers this week, and they kept questioning me about why pipe sizes were the way they were and why things were done, and it's, you know, I wasn't here 20 years ago when it was put in. But, you know, some of our issues in that building are issues that have been there for 20 years and just never correctly addressed.
Are the issues that we're experiencing in that building affecting services? Like, is it too cold or too hot ever in that
In the
building?
library room, we haven't been able to keep a consistent temperature in the children's side in the last year and a half or so. The only saving grace is in the winter. The children's side has radiant heating. So if something happens to that unit, we can still get heat into the space. And it's, truth be told, some of it is lack of maintenance over the years. You know, it's, people looked at it as, oh, it's a new building, it doesn't need anything, and it couldn't be further from the truth. The fewest headaches I have is this building. It's just built like a tank, and the old systems just operate well, and the kinks are worked out. But, you know, people always assume new buildings work well, and it's almost never the case.
And we've certainly experienced that in the middle high school. That thing's been a HVAC debacle since day one. So,
Same error.
Seems like true of every building we've built,
Yeah.
which leads me to,
Okay.
that's another rabbit
yeah.
hole.
Part of it is finding the right contractor, and we found a new contractor that, you know, you get into, you have a controls guy that can look at whether the equipment's talking to each other. But once something doesn't respond, all they can tell you is, yes, the controller's working, or no.
Right, it's sending us
And then you have to bring in another contract, and everyone points their fingers. The contractor we've been working with does it in-house. You know, a new control system, they have someone that comes in to help them, but they have a specialist in-house that can look at the system and say, you know, there's a controller burnt out on one of the library units right now, that our first contractor said, oh, you know, $10,000, you have to replace this unit. Turns out that little controller, all it does is tell us when the filters are dirty. Well, it's kind of irrelevant because we change them on a regular basis anyway. So for units that are going to be replaced in the future, I can't justify spending $10,000 for it to send a message from the roof to the IT room to say, hey, our filters are dirty. We know we replace them on a regular basis anyway. So it's a whole host of challenges mixed with
Yeah.
it.
All right. Thank you. Good answer.
So the way you have this time phased is replace the HVAC in 27 and replace the roof in 29. Does that make sense if you're replacing units on the roof to replace the roof after?
Typically when you replace the roof, the units on the roof, you'll hopefully find a unit that fits on the old curb. If not, they make curb adapters. So in theory, you can do it without actually touching the roof. But it's an excellent question because you don't want to put a roof on and immediately have to patch it.
Right.
There's also the potential.
I guess I'm just saying maybe you do them at the same time and then it's.
I think we're early on the roof, and there's a potential that I could break this out and do the controls work first, and limp the units along for 5 more years and be able to push them back. At the moment, I unfortunately don't have that as a guarantee that we can do it, but it's a potential.
Right, I'm just looking at the plan as laid out. It says 27 for the HVAC and 29 for the library roof.
Would this $32,000 give you some more insight in terms of how, if you might be able to phase it?
Oh yeah, yeah. It would. This would be able to give me a workable design, get estimates for each project, and then I could break out those projects at that point, and have a real cost for you of, you know, the controls are going to be 50 or 100, and the rooftops are more than we thought. But if we do the controls, that would maybe allow us to limp those rooftops along for another 5 years and push them out even more. You know, and unfortunately, I don't have the expertise without the engineers getting involved to make that call.
And with this, not the design, but the HVAC itself, would that be green communities eligible?
Yeah, I think anytime we're replacing HVAC, there's the opportunity for that.
So it seems like across the town, school and municipal side, we should be seeking to phase these in such a way that we maximize grant opportunities.
Yeah, I think with Green Communities, we have one more round where we could get up to 200, and then we're capped to 100 a year, I believe, if we use that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the controls is a good option if we can get that going and keep those units. You know, it allows you guys to allocate money elsewhere, because I know it's desperately needed everywhere. So.
Okay.
Windows.
The next one is town hall window replacement. So the vast majority of the windows on town hall have been replaced from the originals with some vinyl windows. The exception to that is the 5 basement windows are still original. A couple of issues with the windows. One, they're 8 or 9 feet tall, so even opening and operating the windows, each sash is huge. And then the other issue you have is at some points we have ceilings running in and the window going past. Looks kind of silly. It's not the end of the world, but so our thought was, and it kind of came from based off the design for replacing the windows here, is have a fixed transom at the top and then 2 smaller windows. And that's actually what was on Ritter originally. I print out just to pass around to you guys what I'm talking about with the fixed panes at the top. More matches the style. And then this, a lot of these vinyl windows that are in there right now don't work. We had a cracked pane because a bird flew into it, and it's not like you can just call up and order the part and pop it in. It's, every time a piece of glass breaks over there, it's a couple $1,000s to get it replaced.
Is APDC and historic aligned with the window selection, or is this?
We haven't taken it through that yet. I don't anticipate a huge pushback from APDC or historic, only because the windows that are in there are newer vinyl windows and don't match anything remotely historic. So I think this approach would garner their support, but we haven't gotten to that level yet.
Right, I think at this stage is the right time to approach them and have them be proactive rather than reactive in their assessments.
Well, it's only if you have a window selection already. They're gonna ask, what do you wanna replace them with, so they're gonna wanna,
Right, but there's,
they don't have a window booklet they can pull out and says, okay, I want you to put it in one of these styles.
No, they should
They're gonna
set-
ask you,
They should set requirements that Chris needs to follow, not bring me a rock and I'll tell you if it's the right rock.
And my approach again was APDC approved a window style for this building, and my thought was just stick with something they're comfortable with.
but these are different era buildings.
There,
And that building is almost 100 years older than this building.
it is.
And I don't know if that's a consideration that they have, but
I would think it would,
it may be.
yeah,
And I think you were here for the histrionics that occurred relative to this building. I'd rather not appropriate $210,000 and then learn that it's double that because of a historical need that requires a level of customization that doubles the cost.
with the windows that like kind of drip as they.
Right, yeah, that like Puritan effect of the melting look to it.
I would hope not, but I agree we should get APDC on board with, what they would entertain, and I'm guessing they didn't exist back when someone slapped vinyl windows in that building.
No, they did not.
So we were lucky enough here to find the old photos of the original building, so we were able to because right now the only windows in this building I think that are original are the round windows up top. Everything else in this building has been replaced at some point. That one again is probably likely to have some Green Communities grants because it is energy savings, but have not vetted those out yet.
Okay, teen center?
Teen Center. So, not sure if you guys have been in there recently, but the floors are in rough shape. The usage this building gets from, call it 2 o'clock to, whenever they all leave is quite a bit, and the kids have a tendency to trash stuff. I even included the picture from this week
And
with
die
the,
there, obviously.
Yeah.
so I figured I'd throw in a little humor. The picture was taken this week from the Shrieks and Creeks.
It happens.
And this was one that this was one of the typos that should say 25,000, not 35.
Okay.
The estimates are based off of all the work we just did at the police department for square footage numbers. So for 25,000, I think we can get the carpet upstairs replaced with anything but carpet because the wear and tear is just not great, and the VCT on the first floor as well.
Yeah, vinyl plank is great.
Easy to clean.
Very durable. Easy to install.
So this has, a few dollars in there for a design specification for a floor, estimator construction contingency, and our cost per square foot to replace the flooring.
I'm going to ask a question. You're the expert, so I assume the answer is yes, but I have to ask. Things like vinyl plank, do they actually last? And I ask because I've only seen them in I've seen them installed in many high use areas and seen them go absolutely to crap super fast. Now, they may not have chosen the right vinyl plank for the scenario, etc. But I'm always hesitant about it based on I've seen a lot of bad modern flooring.
I would agree. The Home Depot stuff you get, floating in your house, typically isn't going to hold up as long. We kind of have a little bit of a test project going. We replaced all the flooring in the beach house with a vinyl plank.
Mm-hmm.
We did that in house with the guys because when the building's closed for 9 months out of the year, it's easy to pick away at a project like that. But that one surprisingly takes a lot of abuse because no one wants to wipe their feet before coming in.
Yep, sand. Right.
And for whatever reason, before that building had carpet, which is just mind-boggling that anyone would think carpet at a beach house was a good idea.
Had quite the aroma to it.
Well, they also used to store the buoys inside. They would drag them in at the end of the season, soaking wet, close the doors, and not come back till spring.
Lovely.
So that also no longer happens.
But it's holding up well at the beach house.
So far, yeah.
That's 1 year, right?
1 year.
Yeah, just one season. So it's
A lot of the places I'm thinking of in one season with similar grit issues for incursion into the building. Yeah, within one season you could tell.
I mean, like in any flooring, I mean, there's going to be low-grade residential, medium residential, high residential. Then there's going to be low-grade commercial, high, medium. I mean, so you run the gamut.
Yeah.
and that was why I included a little bit of money to get an architect on board to spec something that is going to hold up and last and have a nice
I
warranty.
mean, that main floor takes up beating.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think as much the upstairs, but the main floor of that building is used.
Yeah, and the carpet up the stairs, they got tape on the lips of it to keep it. It's. I'm impressed it lasted as long as it did.
Well, I was going to say they make things last there. I can tell you that right now.
So, any other questions on that?
And then we go from kids abusing the floor to seniors abusing the
Yep.
floor. Unbelievable.
Put tennis balls on the walkers, man. I don't know.
There's
Wow. This is recorded, man.
so for the senior center request is only for the first floor, and the plan would be to replace everything but the areas of ceramic tile. The flooring is a mix of installed in different years depending on the room you're in. Their main function room is obviously newer, but it gets more use. We waxed the floors this year to get some extra use out of them, but I think the Council on Aging would like to see it all get replaced. The other issue we're running into, and it's not a fun one, is carpets in there. We've had a couple of, we'll call it hazmat spills of bodily fluids, which is just never fun to clean out of a carpet. And that, as well as the safety issues of having a nice uniform flooring in there, is just going to help the people that are in there. It'll make it easier for them to roll tables into one space or the other. It's
Do we have any buckling or the stuff that you would stick between two unlike pieces of flooring?
the transition strips.
Yeah.
There's a few of those now because it's you walk into the main lobby and there's a area of tile, And then if you go this way, there's carpet. If you go this way, it's a different VCT type floor, and it's quite a bit. Some of the wheelchairs will occasionally grab one loose string, and if you're in a power chair, you're not going to notice. So by the time someone catches you, it's
Going
pulled
around
out.
the
It's pulled out
carpet.
a string around the corner, and
How old is the flooring there? now?
in the newer section, it's original. That was put on in the '90s.
Okay.
The rest of it, unfortunately, before my time, there was not great record keeping of when things were completed, and a lot of it's best guess. And again, this one, contains some money for drawings and specifications to make sure we're using the right materials that'll hold up. And I don't want to be the only one saying, yeah, I like this floor. And I don't want to be involved in picking colors at all.
I'll let you go ahead now. I do have another question about that building, but
That was all I had for this one, so happy to answer any questions.
Do you have a plan in your out years, and I just scanned it and I didn't notice, for an elevator for that building?
Not right now. The second floor, in my opinion, and Sue may not agree with it, but right now, as the second floor stands, there's no great use for them up there. I'm not a fan of chairlifts, but that would probably be the solution there. But again, we would have to come up with kind of a real plan for the use of that space. And if you go in the older section where the pool table is, above it, there's on either side there's a little area, but there's nothing in the middle. It's there's a whole bunch of wasted space. And
I asked the question because, and I couldn't recall because she had spoken one of our meetings, but I think she might have collared me. It might have been outside of a public meeting, but Mrs. Lincoln collared me one day to talk about that building, and she had mentioned that the Veteran Services agent uses the upstairs space in that building apparently, or
maybe
could or should.
maybe at one point. Currently, the veteran service agent is downstairs next to my office.
Okay, down here.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So we're not programming upstairs in that building at this point.
Not at the moment.
Okay, all right.
I don't think there's ever been programming there. There was the time when the veterans agent was there, but that's many years ago. But
Okay.
they've never had programming. upstairs.
Okay, all right. I might have misunderstood, but
Anyone else on this one? So the next project here from the Parks Commission is the survey and design of McNally Field. There's been a couple ideas floated around, but the big ones are kind of making the space more accessible, adding some bathrooms potentially, and looking at potentially moving T-ball over there. As part of the Marshall Park renovation plan, the T-ball field over there goes away. Currently, they are using the old primary school field, which is getting by, but it's not. They're just playing in a grass field and putting bases out there. So it's not the best thing in the world, but for now it'll do. There's also the potential that's been floated for this that the water district owns a piece of land abutting it, of potentially some kind of a land swap to be able to expand the park that way. So this one is really going to be survey and start the process of conceptual designs to, in the future, do something more with the space.
so the Marshall Park plan removes the T-ball field from Marshall Park, but preserves the softball / minor league
Yep.
baseball
So
space.
as part of the Marshall Park plan, Powell Field is largely untouched. Maybe there was talk of taking the softball dugouts over there because they were nicer, but the T-ball field goes away. The softball and the 90-foot diamond would be rotated and rebuilt, but Powell Field would largely stay as is.
Okay.
You can't really touch Powell Field because it's too close to wetlands, and
Yeah, they wouldn't have let them build that today the way it was done.
I don't think it was allowed to be built when it was built.
If you knew Ray Powell, you'd understand.
We did some test pits out there recently, and that whole, when you go down there and you hang a right, that is all filled. That was just piled in there.
What's the difference? I'm guessing it's size, but what's the difference between a T-ball field and a regular baseball diamond?
So the T-ball field that they had was really just a stone dust lot, and it's significantly smaller than the Little League fields. And the Little League fields, I believe they changed their regulations this year. I think they're part of the Cal Ripken League, and some of their
Yeah.
distances have changed. And then the softball is a little different because they don't have the grassland field.
Yep.
And then you get into the 90-foot diamond, which can be anything from what it is now as a regular high school field to sizes similar to what Fenway has out there. There's not a great standard of field sizes.
I grew up in a town with less money than Lunenburg, so we played t-ball on the Little League field. So I just didn't know what the
There's no reason you can't play t-ball in the Little League fields.
There's
My
no reason why you
kids
can't play it where you're doing it right now. I played it where the library stands now, and it was a grass lot. You know, I guess my question. So last year, I inferred that the thinking on this was potentially to get 2 fields out of this space, plus parking, plus bathrooms. Is that still kind of where your head is in terms of, or is it repurpose this space plus parking plus bathrooms?
I think it could be a combination of both. I think getting a second field in there would be huge. And again, I don't know that making it specifically for T-ball is the right way to do it. And again, you kind of need the surveys and some conceptual plans to see what's going to fit and what's even possible.
But you got 2 usable fields at Fitzgerald. You've got fields at Marshall. You could potentially make this a designated T-ball place.
You potentially
right? Is
could, and it's
We have plenty of baseball fields there. They
Yeah.
take up a ton of room, and they're only used very infrequently.
Do you have any
Soft-
feelings about
soft-
rectangular fields on the other hand?
I
Softball
think we
was
need
always a
more.
problem. We never
I
had
tend to
enough
agree.
softball.
No, I get it.
and to be honest, the softball girls made it to the playoffs and the boys didn't this year. So I think the softball should have a little more attention at the moment.
The other thing I
And I
dislike,
don't like the idea of moving the softball dugouts to the boys' field.
The thought was move the softball dugouts to Powell and new dugouts for the softball.
Oh, well, new dugouts is good.
And the only reason that ever came up was because the owner of Astro Crane has been involved in Little League for the years, and I think he had volunteered the use of the crane to move them.
Oh, okay.
So whether any of it comes to fruition, is yet to be seen. But
Would it, if you just decided that you were going to designate that field as it exists today for T-ball, is there anything stopping you?
Other than the politics of everyone getting involved in it, I mean,
No, I mean, just can you use that field and play T-ball on it?
you could. I think you'd be better off at Fitzgerald than this one. But it's, it all kind of hinges on the numbers of Little League, and if no one's playing Little League, no one's going to be playing at high school. Those of you that know me or my family history, baseball is kind of a big thing for us, so I like the idea of it, but at the same time, we need rectangular fields as well. And there's been talk of future stuff. The Parks Commission has some land up on Northfield, and the plan for the future at some point is rectangular fields up there.
I think you just also need park space. Like, the problem I always have with baseball fields, and even I was down the one near Wallace Rink yesterday, just walking around it, and
Yeah.
you have all this open land, and people are in these little areas. You got baseball fields that no one's on, and no one even goes in there to play, right? And I think it's because it's fenced in and it's just closed and it's not. So, I think we have plenty of baseball fields in town. We have more than enough, in my opinion. Especially for the league is way lower than probably when, I don't know if Ray played or anything. But
Ray did not, but I did, and it's probably a third of what it was.
I mean, there used to be 2 major teams. They were down to 2 major teams, and they just used to play each other. It's kind of silly,
I think
right?
we had 6 and 4.
Yeah.
6 minor, 4
Yeah.
major, and then Babe Ruth and all that.
Oh, your memory's better than mine. It wasn't that long since I was playing, and I can't remember how many teams there were.
And then the other hard part with the leagues is the infields were all different. That's what gets really hard on field design.
We also have some maintenance costs because stone dust is the worst thing you could ever use for infields. It's just the weeds love it.
Okay.
We fought drainage issues forever when we were on the board of the Little League.
And we still have some significant drainage issues at Fitzgerald in the spring. That one of the fields you can't even get on at the moment, and there's Parks technically doesn't control Fitzgerald Field, it's a conservation property.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that's a weird, yeah.
Huh, okay.
So it's, you know, we maintain it, but it's, Park technically doesn't own it, and I don't know if that means anything in the real world, but it is a conservation property.
I think we don't talk about it.
Okay.
Can we delete that from the?
That's interesting. Okay.
And I think it's a little bit on the neighbor's lawn, yeah, too.
Well, I wasn't gonna say that in the open meeting.
Nobody lied. All right.
And then the last one I have on here, or second to last, I guess, Marshall Pond weed treatment. So this was another one that the Parks Commission felt was important. We got an initial estimate of just over $250,000 to hydro rake the entire pond, and I don't think anyone thought there was an appetite for that kind of money for that work. So the thought was to basically take $50,000 and start with clearing out kind of the center of the pond to help the water flow and do some limited chemical treatment in there, and see how that works out and if more is needed. I think part of that thinking is currently in the Marshall Park master plan, there is trails that lead down there and a viewing deck and expanding the parking area right on Highland there. So it would make sense if that whole thing gets done to have that park be more usable. People can get kayaks in there, and you know there's quite a bit of wildlife to look at. So it's, I certainly think there's some merit to it.
Okay, kayaking is allowed on that pond?
Is
As
what?
far as I know, yeah.
I have no clue. But
What
like
did you ask?
Kayaking.
kayaking,
Kayaking is
it's allowed? Question.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any restrictions on the pond. It's not a conservation property.
I think
Well-
you know, one of the issues that I've seen with that pond has been there have been winters where there's good ice, but you can't skate on it because the weeds are above the ice, or whatever, the lily pads or whatever the
Yeah.
heck they are. And you know, in my youth, this was a center of activity in the winter, specifically because of skating. And you know, we have weirdly, and I don't know if it's weather patterns or water level or what, I have no idea, but certain winters there has been a lot of skating out there, and then certain winters there hasn't.
The last few years we've gotten, you know, we'll get good ice and it'll be on like a Wednesday, so no one uses
Yeah.
it, and then it warms up on a Friday and it's junk before the weekend.
Yeah,
That's the way it works.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if you know it's a global warming thing or whatever, but my thinking is if there was a way to bring that back somehow, right? Like that would be worth the money in my view. But
As an ice fisherman, I'll tell you that the number of winters we have had where the ice, in recent years, where the ice, I mean, I can't comment about that pond in particular, but we've had several winters where the ice almost or never
really phrase it.
is anywhere vaguely safe.
Yeah. The cool thing about this pond too is it's shallow
Yeah.
and it's small, so you're gonna have usable ice sooner than you would on say
Fair.
you know Lake Shirley or
Yeah.
or Whalum.
I mean, the last time I was pond skating was on the VFW in Townsend, and that night 8 of us went through the ice. And again, it was only 2 or 3 feet deep, so it was just kind of like, nope, now we're wet. But
Yeah.
It was October too.
I think we were actually into December. The VFW there also does have a bar, so do with that what you will.
We had a permit, did that expire? That was one of the pushes for last year, was that, I think around a permit.
We're still working through a couple of permitting issues that I think the conversation should be had offline.
Okay,
Just don't want to put my foot in my mouth on something and have it.
Yeah.
you know, right?
All right, but that is something that we need to understand the permit window.
So the permitting, it's typically, I think, a 2-year permit. And the issue is not related to Marshall Pond. We were permitting multiple things at once.
Okay. But last year there was some controversy around when the permit date was actually opened.
So the permit is currently not open.
Okay, so that was the nature of the beast, was that it was stated that the permit was open and it was going to close, and somebody else said, well, it was never actually opened.
Yeah,
So,
so currently the permit isn't open,
okay.
and you know, I would hate to open it if doesn't make it as a priority this year
Right.
and have it expire on us, because it is quite the process to anytime you would get involved in treating water.
Yep.
And this would only basically get about 20% of the project, right?
And it's,
It was trying to test it before we did the whole thing.
yeah, and it's, you know, obviously out by the road where the light poles used to be for the skating would be the ideal area you want. But it would be, you know, kind of cut a path all the way back as close as you can to where it really originates to, again, for kayakers and, you know, I remember driving by every morning in the summer, there's a couple turtles out on the log and there's quite a bit of wildlife in there, so.
The water here flows from, as we're looking at this, right to left.
Yes, and it flows out through the grate there, goes under Highland and into the peat bog, and then eventually makes its way.
Behind the cemetery. And
Yep.
all that, yeah.
Do we know if there's fish in there?
I have not checked. No.
I see people with fishing poles there on the regular.
I know for sure there's beavers.
Yeah, there's a lot of beavers in town. Okay.
Um,
Wonder if it could be stocked.
Probably could. And the last one I have on there is just kind of a heads up of something that's coming. I don't have the estimate. I'm expecting it mid-November. But the current capital plans we have for Ritter are nowhere near enough. We have the estimate for the window material only, and that almost takes up the entirety of the capital project for the exterior repairs. And that's just for the material.
But if we were to move forward with the current plan of record coming out of the building design committee, or whatever it's called now, would we do this, or would we just roll that all into that project?
It desperately needs it. The windows here, I mean, my office is downstairs, and when the wind blows, papers on my desk move. You know, most of the windows downstairs aren't operable. Up here, it's 50-50. We had Monty Tech come in and do a energy audit as part of one of their classes, and obviously, we're losing all of our energy through the windows. You know, and then we have, potentially there would be 5 windows on the far end where the annex would be, that would be, depending on if the annex is connected or not, maybe some of those would be wasted, I guess, for lack of a better term, but at the moment, realistically, we're years out of having that annex, and the heat we're losing here is just,
So nothing on the current plan would negate anything that the building committee is planning to do in terms of building an annex to this building. All of that value would be retained with the current plan.
yeah, with the exception of, again, if they connect, we may take a
Well,
couple
a
windows out
door
of
or
conversation,
something,
yeah.
Right, okay.
But it's,
So, I mean, as I think about this, and I would like to understand what the delta is, right? But I feel like everything else on this list should come after closing the gap on stuff that we committed to multiple years ago and have kicked the can because of APDC or whatever. And, you know, like, we should prioritize finishing the projects that we've already committed to. But again, that's just me.
I don't disagree, and we're finally making some progress and knocking some of these off. I just wasn't able to get an estimator on board in time to get you guys the numbers. You know, because we have plans that are ready to go, and then the next phase was getting an estimator. We had an estimate when our previous town manager was still here, and the two of us talked and agreed that I think it was $8,000 or $9,000 or so for the construction estimate for this building. The current estimate the current people we're working with, it's about $4,000. So they're working on an estimate right now. It was like pulling teeth to get anyone to answer the phone, because in the public works world, this is a small project.
I mean, especially with all this ARPA stuff going on. But, yeah. I mean, it is what it is, but this building isn't going anywhere. Like, we gotta, you know what I mean? Like,
No, I think this building would look great, and having the exterior done, it doesn't matter what we do inside, but it's still gonna look, it's just only gonna get better.
So to that point though, on backlog of projects, have we asked for that? I think we should ask for a backlog and a projection of when all the current projects will be done, because if we're just approving money this year and it's not gonna be done for 3 years because we have so much backlog, then I think that shapes the way you think about this year's capital projects. We should see progress towards what we voted in on on that year.
I agree 100%, and luckily this year we're finally making some progress. We got the library painted. We're in punch list stage there. The roof for the half of the senior center, we have an awarded contractor. I'm working on getting them on board. I had 2 bid openings today for DPW roof and DPW garage floor, which is ARPA funds. So those will be done before the floor needs to get done right away because temperature, and I'm hoping the roof will be just as quick. Library teen room expansion project is, we had our first walkthrough today. Town hall roof, which was a bigger project, and in consultation with the previous town manager, we kind of split it up to get the roof part done first. Our first walkthrough was today, so we are finally making some real progress in knocking these off.
I guess what I'd like to be able to identify, and this could, if it comes in mid-November, it comes in mid-November, is where are the funding gaps? Even if we can't put a finger on it, just knowing where the funding gaps are, I think would be instructive to us, right?
I think I can put something together, kind of at least give you an idea of where the holes are.
Because this is quite a puzzle,
It
And
is.
this year we will not have a continuous town manager. I mean, there's just a lot that we just have got to juggle.
That'd be a mess.
I'm hopeful that next year we'll have a real plan from the building design people, and we can adjust from there and keep moving forward.
So I had a bit of a harebrained idea today, maybe, but I'm gonna throw it on the table anyways. So Main Street Bank is moving out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They're gone.
Yeah, and that's about to be listed for, I think, lease, perhaps sale, but I think lease. The only thing that seems to be at TC Passios, if schools actually pulls out, is the studio.
The gym and the food pantry as well.
Okay,
In the wings.
yeah, but I wonder if we couldn't secure Main Street Bank as a lease and move the studio in there.
It's certainly worth talking about. I know we looked at a couple locations for PAC because we moved them recently within TCP.
And
it
it would
was-
actually pick up like parking spots too, I think.
Yeah, and I think it'd be easier for them and not having to wheel equipment in and out of the building. But I do know ceiling heights was an issue for them, so we would just have to
Okay.
confirm that it works. But I think that's a pretty good idea because that eliminates one. Yeah, what I would love to see with TCP is keep the gym and the food pantry open on the front wing, shut the rest of it down, drain the building, and start abatement because
What'd you say?
Knock it down. Don't shut it down.
Yeah,
Knock
knock
it
it
down.
you know part of our issues there is we're bleeding so much money in that building,
Yeah.
and it's brutal. I mean, the gas bill alone is more than we take in revenue. So the thought was shut down the heating systems, the sprinkler, and start abatement. Because no matter what, we have to abate that building.
Right.
And if it's $1 million this year, it's going to be $1.2 million next year, and more the next. So the longer we kick the can down the road on the abatement portion, and then second to that, if people come in all of a sudden and see a big empty space, if the schools decide to replace Turkey Hill instead of trailers, maybe we could fit up a space for temporary classrooms, or it gives more options. And if it still ends up as tearing it down, then we tear it down. But we didn't lose anything by abating it early.
Yeah, I understand the gym, I think having the gym there is nice, and I understand the food pantry, but, I think we gotta get on the path of just demolishing that building, in my opinion. And I do not think we should be replacing roofs. I kinda lost that debate, but,
Well, and that's kind of at the moment why we haven't pulled the trigger on the other section because we don't have a plan. I'm personally not a huge fan of tearing the whole building down. I think structurally it's fairly sound, but every other system is failed or failing. The current roof that's on there was put on in '86, and they have a 20-year lifespan. So at 38 years, I mean, even when we walk on it right now to find leaks, every time you step foot on that thing, you're causing more damage. And there's another roof under it. So if the leak is over you, Tom, the actual hole in the roof could be 150 feet away. because it leaks through one, and then goes through the section of the old one that's still intact, and it eventually finds its hole. You know, the leaks in Pack, it never leaked during the rain. It was a day or so after, all of a sudden a waterfall would open up.
We gotta get out of there.
So I think if leasing that is viable, I think that's something we should look
And I
at.
think we should certainly look at it. Even if it's not viable, we have to look at it to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Great. We're on slide 20. What do we got? That's it.
that's it.
All
The
right.
next one says thank you.
So, a couple of follow-up items. Definitely we need to get that spreadsheet.
Yep.
With all updated numbers, as well as if you could update the deck so that we have
Yep.
continuity of information there. And obviously identifying the items that are placeholder numbers, such as, you know, an estimate where there's a design thing relating to a screwball number, or hairball number around what the actual cost is. By the way, there's a lot of that in the school stuff too.
It shouldn't be too bad to do that. I mean, some of it I have to adjust formatting because I don't know that anyone would understand my gibberish and notes on there.
Yep.
But, you know, formatting stuff like that's fairly easy.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of times abatement at TCP. Is that in one of those slides?
Not one of these slides.
As
We-
part of the out years?
Yeah, we had budget numbers for the out years. I don't know how accurate they are. Last year, I actually asked you guys for money to complete the survey, not knowing that we actually had it, which
Okay.
was fairly embarrassing. But
It's not the craziest thing that's happened around here lately.
unfortunately, all the past records are in paper. No one knows where they are. You know, John Londa's office is still full of paperwork over in Brooks House, and it's
So we have the survey information
Yep.
for that building.
Yep, yeah, we have the asbestos survey. Luckily, one of the biggest items is the roof has almost no asbestos in it. The only areas are caulking at the edges and windows, but the interior of the building,
Noted.
the floors are all of it, all the pipe insulation, and to get to the pipe insulation is very destructive. So there's no abating that and just continuing to use the space. You know, the ceilings are not traditional drop ceilings, they're the old cardboard things that once we start abating a space, we're cutting it. Then there's really no in between.
One of the, oh, you done with that?
Yeah.
What's the plan for the gas station?
That is a fantastic question that I'm not able to answer. The previous town manager kind of kept that one at arm's length for me, and I really just handled access for when people needed to get in and out. So I'm not 100% positive where we are with that one. I do know they were out there testing the monitoring wells last week, but beyond that, I'm not sure where we are with it.
So what's the current status of the building? We own the,
I believe
Property,
we own
the building.
Yeah, we own
Yeah,
the property.
we
We control
bought-
it.
Yeah, we just own it.
and everything is completed on the last,
The tanks have all been pulled out, and now we're just at monitoring stage. And Heather had been working with the mass redevelopment people on kind of a plan of where to move forward with the building.
Yeah, they came to the planning board, solicited some feedback, presented some concepts, there was discussion. Not that they could really do anything other than kind of then have a plan in place so that when it was sold to someone else eventually, likely, I mean, to some private entity, it would be kind of, and like, here's what you can, like, here is proof of what you can do with this
Paths
space.
to developing it or something.
Yeah.
is there anything we could do grant related to just say like knock it down, put in a food pantry there,
So part of the
under
issue,
grants or?
part of the issues they have over there is it's in the village district. So right now you're kind of grandfathered on some of the stuff, but if you knock it down and rebuild, anything you rebuild has to be 2 stories. And the space requirements of parking, you really can't get. And there's a bylaw that if there's parking available within, I think, 1,000 feet, you know, you can push the limits, which the thought was, well, we have all the parking here at Ritter. You know, the area's there. But, you know, at one point I floated the idea of using it as a facilities garage, and that was one of the quickest no's I ever got. And part of that is, again, the village district doesn't want 2 big garage doors there. So the building's in rough shape but savable. But again, it used to be on a septic tank that no longer exists, so now it needs to be connected to sewer. So there's some work there for whoever takes it over. But it would be great to get the eyesore out of the center of town.
Is there a single garage door on there right now?
Two.
And we don't want that?
I don't think we can keep it that way based off of the rules. And again, it's just another thing for us to maintain. That I think selling it would be better. There was at one point the idea floated of seeing if the guy who owns Main Street Bank wants it because, excuse me, my understanding is he owns the whole lot there, of the bank, the post office, all of it. So there was some thought of, hey, here's an abutting property that's coming up for sale. Do you have an interest? But again, I was kind of kept at arm's length from that.
Okay. And there's been no discussion at select board around that? For
That's,
use of that
what
property?
was just discussed is the latest I know. Like, we own it now, all the stuff is done, and we were getting ready to see how we could market it. But, you know, it's either with the building or without the building, and there's pros and cons of both because of the size, the postage stamp size of the lot. And if you did it with something that was going to be, you know, mixed use, then you need parking. Chris touched on all of it, so that's where we are.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it'd make a great coffee shop or something of that effect, or a bakery, or some kind of small office.
Yeah, it could.
The new owner would almost certainly have to come to an arrangement for parking because we don't have public lots that are super available. They'd have to come to arrangement with the owner of the lot behind or something. You can, as you said, you can slush parking in the center district more or less, as long as there's enough parking within, I think it's 1,000 feet, it's like close to a quarter mile, but not quite. It's flexible, but you have to have spots that are dedicated to your count for parking. And that's where it gets, you don't have to have dedicated spots like cafe parking only, but any given parking spot can only be counted once, because otherwise everyone would pick the same 5 spots and
Right.
there wouldn't be parking. I think it's going to be a lot of people agree a coffee shop would be really nice. I think anything there is going to be a challenge, but I'm not a developer, and developers have ways of making numbers work.
It's not gonna be easy, whatever it is.
I guess it all depends on too if the town wants to make an agreement of, you know, give us $1 and you have it based off these conditions, or if we were trying to make some money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
because
Oh, I don't think we're looking at
Yeah.
making any money.
It's also, I think, subject to this new tax taking rule, where we can't make a profit off of a property that's been taken.
Oh, yeah. Again, we're not looking to do that anyway.
there's a new rule, you just can recoup your tax loss, and
That's it. I mean, because you can't make a profit off the back of somebody who has lost a property due to tax taking. I'm not stating it correctly, but that's basically.
close enough for
It was
our
a,
purposes.
yeah, it
now.
was a Mass Supreme Court thing. So, anyway. Okay. All right. Anything else for Mr. Ruth?
Nope. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so
guys,
much.
and
Thanks, Chris.
I will get those revised documents over to you as quick as I can.
Okay.
I have one more question for you. Is that the same water bottle you had last year?
It is.
Wow, I'm rough on my bottles. Cool. There we go.
He saw mine and went and bought
Oh.
the same one, and then
Wasn't
he bought
going-
the same color.
Yeah, wound up with the same color, but I see how pristine yours is, and mine is.
Mine's taken some good hits. I've had to bend this back a few times. And
Yeah, this doesn't really sit flat anymore, but
Okay. We have 3 sets of minutes that we have run by you all. They are from 7:10, 7:31, and 10:09. Are there any comments, questions, concerns, motions to be had?
No questions, no comments, no concerns from me.
I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for 7:10, 7:31, and 10:09 as presented.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? It is unanimous. We have approved 3 sets of minutes. As I explained to Mr. Alonso, did not stay tuned to committee reports last night pertaining to the select board. Has there been any further discussion on the policy manual?
No, I did not mention, I mentioned that we met and we heard a presentation. I didn't bring up that, so I apologize.
Okay.
There was lots of other stuff going on.
Yeah,
last
no,
night.
I understand that. It's totally understandable. I have not constructed an email that I
Yeah.
talked about the other night, but I will put that on my list of things to do. I don't think it's worth further discussion tonight. Okay. We have a future meeting scheduled for November 4th. At that meeting, we will hear,
That's Monday, right? On Monday?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
we will hear, currently scheduled is DPW and fire. We do not have subsequent meetings planned at this point. We still have the available meetings calendar, which is still current. I know Mr. Menard is traveling in November, as am I, so I might suggest that we need to look at some remote meetings following the 4th and could circulate some of those as proposals.
Are our presentations done on November 5th? Is that what
The only outlier is IT, which we have not nailed down. Is that amenable to you guys, is to meet via Zoom?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in like way different time zones, so.
Okay. So if you can't, we'll catch you up and.
Yeah. I mean, what's next? It's starting.
We're gonna roll these up. We're gonna do an initial, like we did last year, order of the current year. Collect them. I think it's really probably a 2 meeting minimum following the 4th to get that done, and then we'll, sketch out a plan for how we deal with the out years.
What's our supposed deadline on all this?
before Christmas?
Before Christmas, yeah,
Okay, so we have early December to.
indeed. We had the best of intentions, but here we are. Okay. Any further discussion on meetings? Is there any public comment?
None for me.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.